Imagine playing a game for hours, days, maybe even weeks. You're deep into it. You've beaten bosses, found rare loot, built up your perfect character, and then, in a single instant, it's all gone. Not because you chose to start over, not because you made a mistake, but because the game decided it was your time to lose it all. Completely random, no warning. How would you react? Well, believe it or not, CyberConnect 2 actually tried to put that into a game, and Sony said no way. But here's the twist. Years later, Nier Automata pulled off the exact same concept and got away with it. So, what happened? Why was one rejected and the other allowed? And is it possible that Sony was playing favorites? Or is there a much simpler, much smarter explanation? Let's break down this strange piece of gaming history. Hiroshi Matsuyama leans into the story. He starts with a confession. All right, let's talk about the whole data loss thing. The complete erasure of save data. Yes, deleting your entire progress. What exactly went wrong? Half joking, he admits he once looked at Nier Automata's now famous data deletion mechanic and thought to himself, wait, why was Hack not allowed to do that back in the day, but Nier can? This is discrimination. Sony's playing favorites. Of course, he laughs at himself now, but back then, he was dead serious. He pushed Sony for answers. Why was his idea rejected? What made Nier's version acceptable? At the time, he didn't understand the difference. Today, he does. But before we get there, let's set the stage and talk about the games themselves. For anyone unfamiliar, Hack is a multimedia franchise that started in the early 2000s. At its core, it's a series of action RPGs developed by CyberConnect 2 for the PlayStation 2. But what made it unique was its structure. Instead of being just one game, the original Hack was released in 4 separate volumes: Infection, Mutation, Outbreak, and Quarantine, each telling a different part of the same overarching story. The story itself was about an MMORPG called The World, and the player controlled a character who was actually playing this in-universe game. It blurred the lines between the real and virtual worlds, mixing in mystery, danger, and strange glitches. It was one of the first big game series to tackle the idea of what if something dangerous was happening inside an online game, long before Sword Art Online made the concept famous. Because Hack was all about the feeling of playing inside an MMO, CyberConnect 2 wanted to include mechanics that made it feel unpredictable and alive. And that's where the infamous deleted feature came in. Matsuyama and his team thought it would be interesting, even thrilling, if the game had a tiny chance of something disastrous happening. In this case, they planned for there to be a small probability that your save data could be completely erased. Think about that for a second. You might play the game for dozens of hours without issue, but one day, maybe while doing something completely ordinary, the game would decide that this was it. Your data would vanish, gone forever, no matter how much time you had invested. The idea wasn't meant to be purely malicious. The team wanted it to feel like part of the world's danger, something that blurred the line between reality and the in-game fiction. They thought if they warned players that overuse of certain features could cause data loss, it would be fair, a risky mechanic that added tension. But when they pitched this to Sony, the response was immediate. Absolutely not. From Sony's point of view, this was what they called unintended behavior that inadvertently harms the player. In other words, even if the game said it might happen, they saw it as the game doing something harmful without the player intentionally triggering it. Sony felt it was fundamentally unfair. Matsuyama now compares it to events in games like Dragon Quest. You might run into a silly or unexpected encounter, like the puff-puff moments, but those are harmless. This mechanic would have been the opposite, a random moment that could devastate your entire experience, and Sony wasn't willing to let that slide. So why was Nier Automata allowed to do something similar? For those who haven't played it, Nier Automata is an action RPG developed by Platinum Games and directed by Yoko Taro, released in 2017 for the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. The game is known for its unique storytelling, multiple endings, and willingness to break the rules of traditional game design. One of Nier Automata's most famous moments comes after you've beaten the game multiple times and are heading toward its true ending. The game asks you a question. It tells you that to achieve the final act, to truly complete the journey, you must erase your save data, and it makes sure you understand exactly what that means. You will lose everything. All your progress, your upgrades, your items, gone forever. But here's the key. The choice is yours. The game explains it, waits for your answer, and if you agree, you press the button yourself. There is no randomness, no surprise. The player is in complete control. This is the crucial difference Matsuyama now understands. In Nier Automata, the deletion is deliberate. It's an emotional choice tied directly to the story's themes of sacrifice and connection. It works because you know what's coming, and when you choose to do it, it's a powerful moment that stays with you. In Hack, the proposed mechanic was random. You could be playing normally, enjoying the world, and then without any specific action on your part, everything could disappear. Even if it was technically warned somewhere, the player wouldn't feel responsible. They'd feel cheated, and that is why Sony shut it down. Matsuyama calls Nier's approach clever, devilish, and entirely intentional, the kind of design that makes Yoko Taro famous. In hindsight, he realizes that his idea was missing that essential element of player agency. Back when Sony first rejected the mechanic, Matsuyama didn't see it that way. He admits he pressed their representatives hard. He kept saying, "Why not? This is part of the vision." He was young, passionate, and unwilling to compromise, but as he's grown older and looked back on it, he's realized they were right to stop him. If Hack had released with that mechanic, it probably would have been a PR disaster. In today's world, where social media can turn one bad story into a viral controversy, the backlash would have been instant. Imagine Twitter threads, YouTube rants, and Reddit posts all titled, "This game deleted my save for no reason." The damage to the brand could have been severe. Now he's actually thankful Sony stepped in. What felt like discrimination at the time was really just them protecting the player experience, and in a way, protecting CyberConnect 2's reputation. So yeah, I'm grateful we didn't push it through. Thank you, Sony, for stopping us. It's rare in game development to have a platform holder override a creative decision, and for the developer to look back years later and say, "You know what? That was the right call." But this is one of those moments. It also shows the power of presentation in game design. Two ideas that look similar on the surface can be completely different in execution. The difference between .hack and Nier Automata wasn't the fact that save data was deleted. It was the way it was done, the reason behind it, and who made the choice. And that's the story of how .hack almost had one of the most punishing mechanics in gaming history, and how Nier Automata used the same concept in a way that Sony and players embraced. Matsuyama ends the story with a smirk. Sometimes the difference between a brilliant idea and a complete disaster is just letting the player press the button.